So welcome to this first video where we'll give you an introduction to all the components in process orchestration. So this is a free video of my full PI course, and we'll get you started with all the different components in PI. So it's the basics of what we have in PI, it's the architectural discussion and everything that you need to get to know before you can start developing in PI. So I hope you enjoy this full video. It's rather long and rather fast, so you may want to watch it a few times, but keep attention to it and I hope you enjoyed. Hi, my name is Daniel Gerson and welcome to this module 1 where we'll talk about all the different components that is involved in SAP PI and SAP Process Orchestration. We'll just be talking about the integration module, what they're all about, integration, how do you integrate different components between each other. So this is what this module is about, getting an overview of all the different components that exist in this content, so you can be able to develop in it. I guess this was the goal of it. So the agenda is we go through the basics of the PI, we'd go through the architecture, what kind of components is there, and then we'll go into the components, and then what kind of objects do we have regarding this. So let's just talk a little about the PI. When I say PI, it's also process orchestration. Obviously there's a change from PI to process orchestration, but basically the PI part is the same. It'll continue working the same way and will not change that much for this regards. So we have something about it's an enterprise service bus where you can put a message, and this message will be delivered to a lot of other systems or another system. It can be mapped for that to work. The platform is excellent for integrating with SAP systems, and this is where you'd see most integrations being done, because obviously it's tied closely with the SAP system, and it makes it easy for developers to engage in it. And it's a platform focusing on an integration. You can do SAP integration as that, but you can also do non-SAP integration. And this is what we'll be doing in this module, because, well, we're focusing just on what you have on the NetWeaver, this trial account, and there you don't have an SAP system you can connect to. This is just, once you know the basics, it should be fairly simple to connect it to all the other kind of systems we have. So the main project groups that I've been engaged with the PI system is the following. It's A2A, application to application integration, and this is where, you have two type of applications internally, and you want these to talk together. It could be the SAP system that you want to send purchase orders or orders to a warehousing system, so the warehousing system can handle these requests. The other one is B2B, business to business, and this is where you have integration with third-party vendors that is doing different things. So it could be the X12 documents that you are exchanging with a partner over a VANs, AS2, other kinds of networks that you're dealing with. Or it could be some of the XML versions that would also be relevant for this one. So one of the things we have here is B2B is the core concept is mostly document based, where you send a document, but obviously it can also be so one of the gray lines between this is, for instance, if you are connecting to a SuccessFactors, which is, well, a third party, well, an SAP HR system, but you can do it in, well, you can view it as an application because it is just an application you're integrating with. You're pushing some web service call to it, getting some responses back. But you could also, depending on how you see the relationship with SAP and SuccessFactors, you could also see it as a B2B app, integration. So for some of these, you have a gray area where it is. My best analogy is just to say, well, B2B, in my perspective, is just messages that want to exchange and getting a response back on those. You have the ETL, the exchange, extract, transform, and load. This is for BW, business warehouses, where you have a lot of data. You want these data to be transformed and then delivered to another application. Well, I've done a few of these in PI, but it's, if you have multiple gigabyte of data that you want to be sending in large chunks and synchronizing big databases, PI and PO is not the obvious choice for this, because, well, there's too much overhead in it, and you'd probably be better off choosing another product for that. But in most cases, well, you could probably use the PI for this. Third one is managed file transfer. I guess this is a MFT, where you have some files you just want to have moved from one directory to another directory, and that's the whole process of this. And then that's, well, kind of simple and not that complicated to develop. But the PI in this case is just a place where you keep all the components together, so you show what we are integrating with, how it works, and all these kind of things. So why do you want to use PI for PO for integration? Well, there's an easy way to do mapping between different documents. So it is really simple. Well, we'll get into mapping a bit later, but basics, it's quite simple to do a mapping between two XML formats, and you'd see the result. The PI supports a number of multiple different protocols and systems that you can connect to. So depending on what kind of protocol your system is working with, you can always use one of these. And then PI is designed to be really good at, well, obviously you have the SAP native integration, so you can communicate really easy with SAP. You can enhance proxies dealing with this. And, well, it is really a good tool for processing single messages, where you just have, like the ESB, Enterprise Service Bus, where you have a message in, and this is being delivered, mapped, transformed, and done something with, and you're getting response back. Compared to the Exchange infrastructure, the old one, we obviously would see some performance improvement, but we'll get to the reason why that a bit later. So when do we not want to use PI? As I talked earlier, if we have these big data loads that we want to transform, then, well, the PI, the way it works is it's using XML. And when you're using XML, you have a lot of overhead setting up the parser and that kind of thing. And if you have messages above 100, maybe 400 megabytes, then you're getting to be using a lot of memory for all of this processing, and that will be slowing down the system and probably making these messages get an out of memory message. So if you have these big loads, don't use the PI. Otherwise, you need to figure out a way where you can scale the messages down to 50, 10 megabytes. Then you would be much better off. I guess when I started with the Exchange infrastructure 10 years ago, one of the big selling point of all of this was this SOA and loosely coupled, where you have the service-oriented architecture and you're just able to plug in services and remove a system and plug in a new system, and everything should be seamless and everything should just work out of the box. Well, this didn't happen. Not as we were hoping for back in the good old days. Obviously, you can make some better service-oriented architecture with the tool because you have it and it enables it, but well, the trees does not grow into the sky. There's some limits on what you can do, and well, mostly because the systems you're integrating with does not support the SOA in the way that it was described to be working. So yeah, good in practice, but in real life, I've just seen it a few times where it really made a lot of sense, and we can say, we have the service, we can just change a few things and everything's working back again. So what kind of components do we have in this PI system? So let's see here. So one of the components is we have the system landscape directory, and the SLD is the place where you are defining all the different components you have in your system. So here you would show, well, this component you have, or well, what kind of software components you have installed in your system. You would also have a list of all the different systems that is running in your landscape. So all the SAP systems would report to an SLD, and then this SLD would replicate data to the different components. Then we have the Enterprise Service Builder, which is in charge of building all the different content that you have. So this is where you create all the building blocks, where you create the data structures, where you create the interfaces, where you create the mappings you want to have performed. All of this content that, well, basically you can just transfer it from one system to another and it doesn't really change. Then we have the directory, which is another place where you have the data, but this is all the runtime information that you have here. So what you would see there is, well, you would configure the component to work in some specific way, doing some specific task. So one of the analogy I've been using when I've been teaching is, if we take the Lego car example. So in Lego you have a lot of building blocks, and one of the things you do is you build all of these components to something. So you put all the blocks together, and this creates a model that you have up here. But once you've created the model, it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. So if we want to make it do something, then we would go into the directory, and here we would configure it to drive from one location to another location. And well, maybe it could do some fun stuff like open the doors when it gets to the end or something like that. But here you have the two locations information. Here it's just all the building blocks you need to build the model, and here you know where it's going, what's dealing with. So these are the two different components that the user would interact with on a daily basis. Sometimes they would also deal with the SLD just to update some of the components they want to be developing in. There's also another front end for these two components, and this is the developer, NetWeaver Developer Studio, NVDS, that also contains the same kind of information. But the way I see it at the moment is they are lacking a bit of information to be really the most useful they can be. So most often I'll just revert to these two to be dealing with my work here. So now we have done all the configuration. We have set where we need to pick up a file and place it. Then this data is synchronized to the adapter engine, where, well, it's also reading some business systems just to figure out what they are. But basically the information you get from the directory and the repository here would enable you to take the file, run it, and this is all done runtime. So here we're just saying this is what we want, and here we're actually putting the hand on the Lego car and moving it from one location to another location and dealing with all of this. So this is what it's dealing with here. So let's just see here. So the architecture, this is the dual stack and the way it worked back in the days. So you'd still have the configuration on top of here, and you do you'd have some adapters that's communicating with you. There could be a file adapter. For some adapters was just on the ABAP stack. Then when you get a message in, there's some different pipeline steps the message would have to go through. One of them would be to do a mapping, and most often you do the mapping in ABAP. So you put up the mapping into this area here in the Java stack. It will go back and you'll process the message again, and you'll figure out what to do with it. Do we need to put it in the adapter framework and place it out? Or are we using the IDOC adapter to deliver it to an SAP system? Then it also had cross-component BPM, which is a processing modeling tool that will enable you to model processes and make it run a more complicated thing than just taking a message from one location to another location. So this is then the single stack, and here we have a lot simpler flow. So the messages will be picked up by the adapter, mapped if they need to, and delivered to the other adapter. And all of this can happen, just happens in one instance, and the message just only needed to be saved one time, whereas we over here, if we got it here, we'll need to save it in the adapter engine. We'll need to save it before we send it to the mapping. We needed to save it after we got the mapping, and before we put it in the adapter, we need to save it up here. And that was a lot of saving points and a lot of extra data and transmission of data between the two systems, and that just created a lot of extra load. So this process is, I think they're saying it's like 10 times faster than the old one, because you don't have all of these saving points and everything's just working much more smoothly. And then on the same Java stack, you also have the process orchestration part that you're dealing with, and you can handle it up there. So adapters, since we're just talking about the single stack, all adapters are Java based. They enable you to communicate with the different systems you want. You have a receiver communication channel that receive messages from the connected system, and you have the sending messages. That would send messages to third-party system. So some of the different adapters works differently, obviously. So depending on what kind of adapter you need to do your development so it fits that kind of adapter. So for instance, the iDoc, there you have really a tight schema that you need to follow, and you can import this from the SAP system, and then you need to map to the schema and then deliver it to the iDoc, and then it's working. If you're delivering an XML document you think would work, the iDoc adapter is not considering it. So before you're doing your development, you at least need to know how does all of this fit together and how do we develop this. So if we look at the adapters, what they contain, then we can have some different modules on them. So for instance, if we read a file, then we can put in some modules that can do some specific operations on the file. SAP has delivered a list of some standard modules. There's one that can switch the content, which payload you have. Some that can change some of the schema, anonymize it, and there's some different options you can use in the adapter to do different things. This is mostly on the message that you want to be changing some data in. Mostly you would do message structural thing operations in these adapters, or in these modules. You can do mapping unit, but it's recommended to use the mapping inside the mapping part of the system, because, well, that's what it's built for. So the sending and receiving concepts is a bit, well, it takes some time figuring out what it is. So, and figure out what kind of services we have to it and how they are working. So we have the sending system. So the sending system is the message system that is delivering the message to our PI system, and that this would start the full process we have. So this is the sending system, and when we're going to create the interfaces on it, this would be the outbound, because it's outbound regard for the sending system. The receiving system is the one that will receive the message at the end, and here we are creating a receiver communication channel for it. And the service interface would be inbound, because it's being received inbound by the system. So it's a little complicated figuring out how these system works, why you're dealing with them and stuff like this. But after a few times you start to see the pattern, and then it becomes a lot easier. But definitely in the beginning, just be aware you'll probably mess up a few times, but, well, it doesn't matter that much at the moment. You can always correct it afterwards. So I wanted to cover something about XML. I'm not sure your level of expertise in XML, and this is the reason why I'm sharing this. So XML is kind of the core concept of the PI system. You can send text and binary messages and everything else through the system. If you have PDF files, you can send them through. But obviously you cannot do any mappings on them because, well, the system is not targeted at it. So it's used, well, the XML is used in most messages, and those are the messages that's most relevant for. Message, the XML is being defined in different ways. It can either be defined by an XSD, and this is the most common way at the moment. There's some DTD, which is an old format for describing XML, but it's not used that much anymore. But you may end up getting a DTD from someone, and then, well, it works the same way. These XSD makes it easy to exchange information about what's going on. So what are we exchanging? What kind of data do we have? What's working? What's not working? So it's a simple way of agreeing on a standard, and then both parties can follow it. And there's different levels of agreement on it. You can have, it's just something you define internally in your company. You can have just with your business partner, you can find this is the schema XML we're using. You can have some standard organization or government organization that is saying, well, this is the standard that we want to follow. So here's an example of an XML document. So the first thing we have up here is the declaration, and here you would also have, it's saying what kind of encoding UTF-8, which is the most, well, I guess, which is the standard encoding. And then you have the document. So the document needs a root that has to go from the very beginning to the end. And there can only be one beginning and end in a document. If you want something else, you need to figure out a different way of doing this. So we have an order tag that started, and then we're ending the order tag down here with a slash in the beginning of the order. We have some attributes up here that's being used to and from, heading, a date. There's some different formats you can agree on with your partner. You can either say it's just a string, or you can say it is an XSD date, and then you'd have the date format. You can have repeating elements. So here we have two different lines, and on line number 1 we have the line number as an attribute on the line, and then the line contains content, and we have, for instance, the price that contains a currency and a price. So this gives a lot of flexibility on what you want to see, and how you want to represent your data, basically. So in the mapping, we want to take the mapping from one format and translate it to another format. And this is what mapping is all about, going from one format to another. And this is what the PI is meant to do. And so you can integrate the two systems, and they don't care about each other. They just want to send the message in their format and receive the message in their format. How you're doing it on the way, it doesn't really care about. It just wants the message at the end. You can do it in XSLT and in Java also. Do mappings in there. These are a bit more complicated and require some deeper skills, but the graphical mapping you could do out of the box without any further development. Before we also had the ABAP and the ABAP XSLT, and well, some people was found of using these. Obviously, when we're going to a single stack, we don't have any ABAP, so if you have any ABAP mappings, you need to convert those to Java mappings and do the same operations in it. You have the graphical mapping tool that will allow you to map from one document to another document. It's really easy. There's drag and drop. You can move between them. You can see what's going on, what data you have in each of the different nodes. So we have a queue context that you must master before this. You can figure out how to do some really good mappings. And the queues and context, you'd see those when you have some elements like the one we had in this XML, where we have two product numbers in different lines, and you need to figure out which of these product numbers we need to be using in our output document. You can create your own Java functions to improve the functionality, and this is really useful if you have something that you want to achieve and some of the standard function does not support it. Then you can create your own library or import another one and start using it. So here we have the graphical mapping tool, and we can see we have two documents here. We have an iDoc and we have a cBurger Edifact document, I guess, for the invoice. And here we have the one of the fields we are mapping, and this is this one. And here we can see the different content, what we have put into it. This is a standard user-defined function I've created to handle this specific case. And then if the value from this one is 0, then do something and put a value in one of the different fields. So this is what you'd be doing in a graphical mapping. Obviously, well, you have, well, the business understanding is really a crucial element in this, because I would probably have, this is probably a warning you need to get, because, well, whenever the business map between these two documents, if we have these, they would say, okay, we got an information that this field should be mapped to this field, but only in case this happens, and but then they may not know, oh, we also need to get this third field here also, and put a plus or minus in it depending on the value here, because, well, they are not that detailed into all the knowledge. So you may get a mapping specification, and then your best option is to go through it and then define what we need to do for this to work. And as a developer, you need to take some of this responsibility and say, okay, obviously you as a business know most about your application, but what I need to do for this to work is I need to put in these extra blocks and figure out how this works. And that's something your business cannot help you with, and that's where you have to do some operations. So we're dealing with a lot of different objects in this. We talked about the mappings, which is an object. But there are a lot of different objects that you need to understand and where they are and what they are doing. So one of the things we would be talking about is the SLD and where you're placing the object. So you're defining a software component version, and this is done in the SLD, and this is a component you can, well, kind of relating to some software that you can be using. In this one, you'd create a namespace, either using the URN syntax or an HTTP syntax. And which one you choose, it doesn't really matter. Some use the URN because, well, you don't get to think, oh, I can access this page and see something here, which you most likely would not be able to see because you're just doing company whatever. So it's two different approaches to it. Basically, they end up giving the same result. And then at the end, you have the objects that you want to achieve from this, or put into the system in these things. So this is what you do in the repository. So here we have the PI tool page. And so whenever you go to a PI system, you can always write /dir lowercase, and this is for the directory, and this would give you both of these two pages, this page where you can open the enterprise service repository, the integration directory, you have the SLD, and you have the monitoring capabilities over here. So we talked a little about the difference between the repository and the directory, where you in the repository have structural information, all the data types, you have mappings, you have, well, in the CCPPM time, you had the processes in here. There's the governing and about figuring out what kind of structure you want, or naming of these objects. And then developing is done in one system and just transported. No changes is done in the production system. The directory, here we change things in the different system because the file location or the server location is different in the test system, in the QA system, and in test QA, development QA and production system. All of these is different, so you need to do different configurations in them. You can transport from development to QA and to production, and then you would go in and say, okay, so we're transporting everything, and then you would go in and change the path names and stuff like that to point to the new system. So an example that we'll go through is we want to send an XML file from the warehouse to the SAP system. We're using a file, and that way. So we would need to define some service operations here for this. So we define a service operation on we're receiving from the warehouse. So we'd have a warehouse. What was it? The data type we were sending? Oh, it's inventory. So we'd have a service interface for the inbound, the outbound here. The service operation would always be the same as the service interface. You can have multiple different service interfaces. So if we're doing the inventory, and it's a web service, you may have like get list of inventory, search, delete, update, change inventory. So these you would have the service operation that's just called inventory, and then you would have different operations underneath that would give you different kind of objects that you can use in it, or different operations with some different messages depending on which one you're choosing. You have the methods type that we want to be defining, and then we have a data type, and the data type can be recursive, so we can do the inventory header, and we can do all the different item lines on it as two separate data types, but link them together. On the SAP side, we also need to create an inbound interface for the warehouse, and the service operation would in this kind of be the same, because well, we'll just have update warehouse if that's our case. We could use an external definition here. Of an external definition is defined as an XSD. Then we would have an operation mapping that takes the message from the one operation to another operation. This is not doing anything, but this is the one you would be configuring when you get to the directories. Then you'd say, this is the one we have here. Then you would have a mapping that could go from the message type to the external definition. Two XML documents we just want to map as we saw the earlier one. Or we can have an imported archive which contains an XSD with this data in it. So if we look at the directory here and see the different components we have here. So we have a configuration scenario that is a good way to group all the different components together, because then you can just transport your integration scenarios from one system to another one. So we have a business system. The business system is created in the SLD, and this one has a communication channel. And in this case, this is the sender communication channel, because the business system is the sender. Then in the integrated configuration, we would have an outbound interface that we're defining. Then we would define which system this needs to go to. Then when we have done that, we would figure out which mapping to use on it, which operation mapping to use on it. And then we would, based on that, we would get an interface that this message needs to be delivered to. And we can have a party for this. Obviously, no fancy thing around this. It's quite boring. But it's a way you can group companies together. So if you're doing a lot of B2B, you would have one for UPS, you would have one party for DHL or whatever. So these would be your different partners you are communicating with. You have the business components that you want to deal with. Business components is just created in the directory, and then you have a sender communication channel that you want to have for this one, where the message is being delivered. So this is the objects you have in the directory. The system landscape directory, here you are creating a technical system. The technical system, if it was the warehouse, we would create a technical system for, it's called warehouse. And then we would create a technical business system that's warehouse development, warehouse QA, and warehouse production. So the technical system gets assigned a software product, and the business system gets defined a software component. And the reason that this is a good idea is when you have defined a software component, then whenever you're choosing, you are creating your integrated configuration, you can always select, based on a drop-down box, you can select which operation we want to be using in this case. So that's why the business system is connected in this way. So you got all the interface objects here. So next video will show you how you can use the system, but I hope that this has been helpful and that you have learned a lot more about what the different component is in PI, PO, and yeah, be able to understand what we're dealing with when we talk about PI, PO system. We will go much more into details in all of these different components, but I just wanted to give you an overview so you had an idea on what's going on, why do we deal with these components, what they are, and what it's doing. So looking forward to meet you in the next session. Bye. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see the next video where I'll show you live how to create all the different components in an end-to-end scenario, then go to picourse.com to sign up if you haven't done already. Otherwise you'll get an email tomorrow with this information on how to get this next video. If you already know that you want to learn more about PI and you like the way I teach and you just want to go deeper now, you can go to picourse.com/picourse.com PI course, and then you'll be able to sign up and purchase the course and get started already today with going through all the modules. If you have any comments, please post them below. If you just like it, just say, "Oh, a really good video," and then I'll respond to those questions that I can get to. So thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next video.